Now, a year ago, we sat down in Hastings when you kicked off your tour of the UK, trying to effectively canvass opinions and options for your next manifesto. Now we're here in Stroud. Succinctly, what's the message that you've been hearing?
Investment. We've got to invest to grow the economy. Investment, investment, investment all the way through. But in places like this in particular, we've been getting that this has to be investment for a purpose. And it's about tackling climate change, green industrial revolution, addressing regional inequalities in particular, and then rebuilding our public services that have been cut back through austerity. And the message is similar throughout the country. I've been doing every other Saturday for a year on this, but people have different ideas about what's happening in their local area. So they're saying, actually, we want the power ourselves locally to deliver these policies.
By Christmas, there could be a John McDonnell Chancellor in number 11. What's your radical agenda?
Okay.
I mean, is capitalism working?
Not effectively, as people, as we've seen all around the country, really. The grotesque levels of inequality. 5 million children in prospect of being in poverty, 2/3 of those in households where someone's at work. Our public services, I'll just give one example. The report 2 months ago, 87 people dying a day before they receive the social care that they need.
So is this just because of not enough money going in, or is it the system that's broken? That's what I'm trying to get at.
It's a combination of both. First of all, there isn't enough money going in. We need a fair taxation system, but we also need a growing economy. We need investment in our infrastructure and skills to enable us to have an economy that will distribute wealth effectively and fairly across our society. You know, such regional inequality is holding local areas back in developing their local economy, for example.
One area where many people feel capitalism in the society really isn't working is housing. You've got an awful lot of young people and not so young people who are struggling to get on the housing ladder. I think it's perhaps difficult to really invest in capitalism, believe in capitalism if you don't have capital yourself. What's your radical plan for housing?
3 issues there. One is the state has to play a role. So it does mean councils building council houses again. So first of all, we've said we'll build 1 million new homes. Half of them will be council homes. In the short term, though, as well, we've got to recognise there's a large number of people out there in the private sector who are being charged high rent, some of them being ripped off as well. So in some areas it will be empowering councils to introduce fair rents. But the third issue as well is actually saying to the private sector, how can we work together to make sure the investment that's coming from the productive elements of the economy, yes, is going back into rebuilding our manufacturing base, tackling the fourth industrial revolution, making sure it's a green industrial revolution, but also making sure that there's investment in housing, but that housing has to be housing for the future. So, in other words, it's about housing that will help us tackle climate change rather than contribute to it.
It feels sometimes like Labour at the minute are very good at pinpointing the problems, but it's the solutions that are the difficult bit. And although I appreciate that you're saying you want to build more homes, more council homes, I mean, this is stuff we've heard from politicians before, isn't it?
By doing these meetings, these town meetings all over the country, you recognise the solution is in the hands of local people. We're saying to people, we'll draft our manifesto now from the grassroots upwards, but what we want you to do is get a local manifesto drafted as well. So when we hit the deck running, when we have a fair taxation system, when we're investing and growing our economy, the resources will then be released to enable you to solve the problems at your local level. It will be local people that will lead this transformation.
One report that you've commissioned, Land for the Many, it says that it would recommend scrapping inheritance tax and replacing it with like a lifetime gifts tax. Are you attracted to that idea?
We're looking at it. It might be one of those ideas, and we're consulting on it at the moment.
But are you attracted to it? Do you like the idea
I think it's interesting. We need to have a fairer system of how we can ensure that wealth is more fairly distributed. That's one idea. And yes, we're listening to a whole range of ideas.
How about the idea of capital gains tax being introduced when you sell a house? So effectively any profit that you make, you get taxed on.
We haven't really looked at that because we feel that most probably won't be the fairest way of going about it. But we have looked at capital gains tax reforms with regard to shareholdings and others, and that will be part of the debate that we have around taxation.
So it sounds like you're a bit keener on the lifetime gift tax, perhaps not quite so keen on the capital gains tax.
On the lifetime gift tax, we'll consult him. That's it. And what we'll do is, in the normal way, completely open and transparently, consult, publish the responses that we come back, come to our conclusions, and then have that debate, democratic debate within the party about what goes into the manifesto.
You also sparked a bit of a reaction this week when you talked about delisting companies on the London Stock Exchange if you don't feel that they're effectively stepping up when it comes to the environment. What's that about?
Okay, it's like this. Look, we've got through Parliament the declaration of a climate emergency. And I congratulate people like Extinction Rebellion. I'm wearing their sticker today. They've put climate change at the top of our agenda. So it's the priority for the next Labour government, basically. And what we're saying is we have to harness all our resources. So in the speech, I laid out all the state resources that will be made available. I also said we need private sector resources to do that. Here's how we'll attract them and manage them. But also, we've got to ensure that there's proper regulation of activity as well. We've got to have a just transition from a fossil fuel economy to a net zero carbon economy as soon as we possibly can.
And do you effectively trust the state to do this and not business?
No, both. It's got to be both.
But you're talking about delisting companies. That doesn't sound like you trust them.
Let me go through it. What we've got to do is have state resources that will invest in the economy alongside private sector resources that will invest in the economy as well. So we're looking at how do we coordinate that. What we've suggested is a sustainable investment board that brings together the Treasury, the Bank of England, the business department as well, alongside the private sector, both in terms of businesses themselves and trade unions. We develop our investment programme and we ensure that we use what powers each of us have got to divert and direct that investment into policies and investments that will tackle climate change. But also, if there are companies that aren't fulfilling their environmental responsibilities, that are undermining everything that we do, putting our planet at risk, there has to be some sanctions as well, and that's regulation.
Some people would say that this is government interference rather than regulation.
Well, government has to intervene in a climate emergency. If we don't act now, and if we allow some of these companies that are developing policies that are undermining our very future, our existence, we'll never be forgiven.
Would it be right to say that the economy that you and Jeremy Corbyn want to see is a capitalist one?
I want to see a transformed economy, so not capitalism as it now operates. I'd like to transform the way we operate. I'd like to see that we have an economy in which it's working for everybody, that actually that we ensure that everyone shares in the rewards. So the way I've defined it is an economy which is basically radically fairer, radically more equal, radically more democratic. That is economically sustainable, but also is environmentally sustainable, but where the rewards from that economy, that prosperous economy, are shared by everybody.
Is that socialism?
Yes.
So you would prefer to replace capitalism with socialism?
I think we're going to evolve into a system in which is based upon that model, which is a democratic economy, a fair economy, a more egalitarian economy, but where we all share in that.
I'm keen to talk about Brexit as well, of course. Now, you promised last week that we would see some white smoke when it came to Labour's Brexit. It feels like we're more in the kind of foggy, cloudy area still.
I was hoping for that.
Well, you must be frustrated?
A little bit, but what happened was that at the Shadow Cabinet 2 weeks ago, Jeremy Corbyn said that we're moving towards a decision on this. We've all agreed that we have to go back to the people. Yes, of course we want a general election, but we have to go back to the people on any deal or no deal. Most probably in a referendum now, and I'm almost certain in a referendum. The discussion then is about what attitude should Labour take, and I've said publicly I would vote Remain, I'd campaign for Remain. Jeremy then said, well, we need to consult our National Executive Committee members who representatives elected by our membership to control our party and manage our party, but also the trade unions. And that's what he was doing. He had a meeting on the Monday before the last Shadow Cabinet, and I thought the next day we were going to move further. The unions asked for a bit more time, fair enough. Now, I don't mind that. Jeremy's the type of leader that Jeremy is a consensus builder, and that's what he's trying to do, bring people together, have those consultations, discussions, and build consensus.
It's been reported that you compared Labour's Brexit policy to a slow-motion car crash.
I wouldn't comment on what was said in the Shadow Cabinet or what was not said.
I'll rephrase. Do you think Labour's policy is a slow-motion car crash?
What I've been trying to say is we need to move now, and Jeremy has said a month ago, yes, we're going to put this issue back to the people. Fully agree.
Some feel, there's been some reporting in the papers, that many MPs want to see a strong position on the second referendum.
Yeah.
And actually it's the unelected officials in the leader's office who are resisting that.
No, that's, MPs are MPs and politicians are politicians. It's politicians who are in control. So the issue here is we've already agreed we're going to go back to the people, so it's the attitude
if it's
in that.
politicians who are in control, why haven't you toughened up your position on it already?
Because then? Jeremy, exactly as I said, is the type of leader I completely support thought and believe we need now, he's a consensus builder.
But do you think then it's inevitable that you'll go into the next election with a position where Labour backs Remain in
We'll
a
see what
second
comes out of the
referendum?
consultations. That's what I'm arguing for, and others are as well. But we'll see what comes out of those consultations. Everyone should have their say, whether it's a National Executive Committee member, a Shadow Cabinet member, or an affiliated trade union. We're a democracy.
Okay. Now, before we go, I want to ask you about Chris Williamson. He was readmitted into the party after saying that Labour had been too apologetic about anti-Semitism, and then he was resuspended. I mean, it looks like a bit of a mess, doesn't it?
I won't comment on any individual case, because if you do, you're accused of prejudging a case. Chris's case will go before, I think it's back to the NEC itself, the Disputes Committee, and then the full NEC, and it'll be decided then. That's due process.
I remember in Hastings a year ago asking you about anti-Semitism at that point.
Well, you know my answer. I was angry about, and I said what we need to be is faster and more ruthless. That's my attitude all through, it still is.
Are you still angry?
What angers me is that we are an anti-racist party. We should be leading the campaign against anti-Semitism in society overall, and this is holding us back. What we've got to do is move forward now, make sure, and I think the investigation by the HCR will help us in doing this. Whatever recommendations come out of that, we must adopt, and then hopefully then have a clean bill of health and enable us to become that anti-racist party, tackling anti-Semitism within society overall, and that's what angers me, that we've got this stain on our society at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.